million multiplied by 2,000.
Inject a new currency into the market is not.
In this video, we will talk about the economy in Somalia that we have learned. Across the globe, unemployment is the most problem, mostly in developing countries. Unemployment is known as when someone needs to work and have the knowledge and skill to qualify, but do not get a job. Employment has always become an important social factor that shows how society is developing. Most people only know that unemployment is when people don't have a job. However, the concept of unemployment is more complicated and broader because unemployment determines how every society looks, because the less employment, the less economic development, and the less economic stability of the society.
For Somalia's population, it will grow rapidly for the remainder of the century by about 75.03 million people at the end of 2099. According to existing forecasts, this means that the population is almost 5 times larger in 8 years, with a current population of 15.89 million than it is now. The population rate in Somalia has risen by 2.92%, up from 2015 per year. This pace contributes around 450,000 people to the population amid negative net migration. In comparison, the fertility rate in Somalia at 6.12 births per woman is exceptionally high. The exponential growth of Somalia's population places pressure on inadequate healthcare and insecurity in Somalia.
Now, I will talk about national income of Somalia.
The CIA calculated the purchasing power parity of GDP to be 3.3 billion in 1994. It was estimated to be 4.1 billion in 2001. By 2009, with the forecast real growth rate of 2.6%, the CIA reported that PPP of GDP had risen to $5.731 billion. In 2014, the International Monetary Fund reported that economic activity increased by 3.7%, driven mainly by growth in the primary and secondary sectors.
The agriculture rate from year 2010 until 2020 is decreased, but there is no big difference because it's still in range 83%. So agriculture is by far the most important sector of the economies, with livestock growing at more than 4 times the value of crops and earning around 3/5 of Somalia's foreign exchange. In southern Somalia, there acacia species of the thorny savanna provides good timber and the main source of charcoal. And it's also the small fishing industry in the country resolve around the northern catch and canny of tuna and mackerel. Selective fish and shellfish are processed for export in southern Somalia, but Somalia's fishing industry was hit by climate change, overfishing and growing outbreaks of piracy along the coast in the early 21st century.
The national debt for the past 10 years of Somalia, the percent of 2010-2011, it increased. 2011 to 2012, it decreased. 2012 to 2015, it increased. 2015 to 2017, it decreased. 2017 to 2018, it's increased until now, 2020.
Application of traditional debt relief mechanisms reduced this debt to $3.7 billion. Additional debt relief under the Ancient HIPC initiative estimates at $2.1 billion in NPV terms. Of this amount, $843 and $1,225 million is projected to be provided by official the alternate and billion-turner creditor. At the HIPC completion point, Somalia's current debt due to the IMF will be paid with the proceeds of financial contribution that has been received from over 100 IMF members, including many low-income countries. Together, Somalia's external burdens is expected to fall from about US $5.2 billion in NPV terms as of end 2018 to US 557 million on the completion point is reached.
Let's take a look for the Somalia's unemployment problem. In 2005 until 2008, the unemployment rate decreased by 0.46%, which is from 11.67 to 11.21%, which is the lowest rate of unemployment. After 5 years, which is in 2009 until 2013, unemployment rate increased by 0.57% from 11.62% to 11.78%, which is Somalia reaches the highest rate of unemployment. The rate decreasing again by 0.50 in year of 2014 until 2018 from 11.69% to 11.28%. Then, in the following years, which is in 2009, 0.07% increase from 11.28% to 11.35%. Let's take a look of a review for the trend of inflation rate in Somalia. In 1976 until 1979, there is not a big change because the rate is around range 9% until 14%, which is in 1977, the rate decreasing from 14.7% to 9.8%, and then increasing in 1978 to 14% and start to decrease into 13% the next year, which is the lowest rate between 15 years. There is a big change happened in 1980, which the rate of inflation increasing until it reached 100.9%. Then, in 1981, the rate decreased to 20.1% and continue increasing for the next 3 years, which is the rate reaches 71.7% in 1984. From 1985 until 1987, there is no big change from range 29% until 33.5%. The curve begins to increase continuously from 1988 until 1990, reaches the highest rate between 15 years of an inflation trend.
So, better to overcome the employment fiscal policy, that reduction may increase demand for goods and will induce more investment, thus increasing employment as a result of increasing in investment. Then a reduction in large taxation will raise people's consumption costs. Then for monetary policy, a reduction in the discount rate will encourage private entrepreneurs to increase investment so that they can employ an individual to work with them. Then, by reducing the interest rate on deposit, total saving will be reduced and the level of demand for money will increase. So, method to overcome the inflation. Fiscal policy. Increased tax will reduce people's disposable income and their consumption of goods and service. So, because of slow demand for commodities, price will drop. In addition, the decline in government spending could affect aggregate demand, and the government will cut civil servant wage and delay the project. So for the monetary policy, raising the reserve requirement can reduce cash reserves in commercial bank and force these commercial bank to restrict the lending activities. So it will reduce the ability of commercial banks to provide loans and will lead to a decrease in money supply.
In COVID-19 seasons, it affected many countries all around the world, and for Somalia, it had the worst because of its world's poorest and most vulnerable crisis. The countries are completely locked down due to combat the spread of the virus within the population and mitigate its spread. Fully closed businesses, schools, universities, and public transport. Thus, this caused Somalian immigrants to lose their jobs and not be able to send money home in Canada, the United States, and EU countries. Since Somalia receives nearly $1.4 billion remittance annually contribute 23% of the nation's gross domestic products. The COVID-19 lockdowns in Western countries have limited the successions of remittance funds smoothly and may have a negative impact on the working lives of individuals, and families will not be able to cover household expenses. Reducing financial transactions means people will not have money to buy goods, and the financial crisis is critical for small businesses which employ a substantial share of the formal and informal workers in the country. Apart from that, coronavirus has seriously damaged the 95% private education sector in Somalia. Teachers at elementary, secondary, and middle schools have lost their wages because tuition fees are charged annually. The teachers at madrasa, which is Quranic school, have also lost their jobs, and lives of their families are at risk of starvation and malnutrition. The worsening economic condition of Somali teachers also is not improved by the safety packages, food packages, or cash distribution.
A government stimulus package is a set of economic measures applied to stimulate stress the economy by a government by lowering tax rates or increase government spending in effort to minimize unemployment and increase consumer spending. The stimulus plan can be used to stimulate an economy emerging from a recession. But impact of government stimulus package on national debt is not available for Somalia, either because the country is not stable and the condition of Somalia. The data of the country are incomplete because of the absence of their central government, and they are considered as a failed state.
We found that Somalia populations increase every year, and this can affect the problem of unemployment. Rapid population growth means a significant numbers of people who will not be able to provide jobs and are entering the labor force. In this, the numbers of job seekers in underdeveloped countries is increasing so rapidly that, considering all the expected development efforts, it has not been possible to provide jobs for all.